Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Is everybody on yet? Getting there? Okay. So they're loading on. Happy Friday.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Does anybody want the hard copy? The 321. Anybody want this, or you just want to do it on the computer? Computer? Want to do it on the
You have a charger?
You're right. Just one person to that's going to charge. We got Austin on. Let me see. Oh. Okay, Aaron Brown, not here, correct? Brendan is not here, right? Brendan, no Brendan. Yeah. We got Austin Dewey. We got Quanez Perry. Emily, right? And Mariano. Okie dokie. So we got 1, 2, 3. Just waiting for Mariano. We just got one more that needs to pop on, okay?
Okay.
Like we're gonna get some bad weather this weekend, huh?
I know.
It's like,
Tomorrow looks frigid.
no, I taught for 33 years, and 29 out of the 33 years has been a snow day on my birthday. And today's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
I was like, it's always close, you know, like I bet tomorrow, with just one day off, we wouldn't have had school because of the cold weather, because it's supposed to be worse than the other day. You know, you guys know that, right? Like, so start your cars, you're gonna be inside, eat soup, and just,
It's supposed to be cold tonight.
yeah, tonight into tomorrow. So we have everybody here. We have just 4 today.
Okay.
I think we're ready to go. I'm gonna get the lights off, guys. I think there's enough for you to see, okay? You let me know. Okay, good morning.
Okay. And give me a shout out if my videos don't have sound. I will make sure that I share my sound so you guys can hear all
Yeah,
this.
yesterday's video had no sound, but we just thought, hey, they're pretty good without it. Like they had all the wording, so. You guys are gonna get to see, oh, okay. We have one more that just walked in. And they just need to we'll go right to the login. So the computer, because it's interactive and you should be able to do that. Okay, one more just came in, but you could go ahead and start.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me here. My name is Christine Muse, and I coordinate the traffic safety program here at the Broome County Health Department. And today I'm here to talk to you all about making some safe choices behind the wheel with our program called Just Drive. So one of the reasons that we like to talk to high school students about this topic is because motor vehicle crashes are one of the leading causes of death for teenagers. And our goal with this program is to keep younger drivers alive during their first few years of their driving experience, because you're at the highest risk during those times. Some of the reasons why the younger drivers seem to be more at risk is we like to call them the 4 deadly Ds: drinking, drugs, distractions, and drowsiness. We're also going to talk about how to share the roadway safely with other users, as well as address the issue of speed. Speed has been a real problem, especially since the pandemic hit. And unfortunately, younger drivers are involved in a lot of those crashes. Inexperience does play a part here with new drivers. You know, you are new behind the wheel. You haven't had a whole lot of time yet to learn how to become a safe driver. So we'll talk about that, as well as some of the protections that we already have in place to try to keep younger drivers safe. So things like the graduated licensing laws If you are in the process of getting your license, you want to become familiar with these laws. They are the restrictions based on the type of license that you have. And then we're also going to talk about seatbelt use. Now, wearing your seatbelt is the best way, most effective way to protect yourself in a crash. But unfortunately, younger people tend to buckle up less. So we're going to talk about that first. Now, to understand seatbelts, we have to understand what happens in a crash. So we're going to go back here to some basic physics. An object in motion will remain in motion at its original speed until something stops it. So I want you all to think about this and how this theory might apply in a crash. So anything that is not secured down in your vehicle, including unbuckled people, they're going to move around in a crash, and they're going to move around at the speed that you're traveling at until something stops it. Hopefully, it's your seatbelt that stops you in a crash and not something else. So you may have heard people say, oh, I don't wear my seatbelt because I can just hold myself back in a crash. I can brace myself against the seat. That's not true, and it's pretty impossible to do. There's this formula that we use to explain this. So weight times speed equals restraining force. So think about how much you weigh, multiply that by the speed you might be traveling at. There's no way anyone can hold back that amount of force. So if you think about just a 10-pound baby traveling in a car at 30 miles an hour, that there is already 300 pounds of force just to restrain that child. Now, there are 3 collisions in a car crash. The vehicle hits something, whether it's another vehicle, a tree, a building. The human hits something. Hopefully what you're hitting, like I said before, is your seatbelt. If you're unbuckled, the thing that might stop you could be the steering wheel. It could be another passenger. It could be the windshield. Now, there's a third internal collision that happens as well. So your internal organs are also moving, and they're moving at the same speed as that you were traveling at. So they're going to collide with each other. They're going to collide with your bones. Now, if you're unbuckled, there's more of a chance for injury, but if you are wearing your seatbelt, the chances of injury or death are greatly reduced. So we tend to see people buckling up far less in the back than they do in the front. I don't know if there's a sense of safety or security back there, but we use this term backseat bullet to describe unbuckled backseat passengers. So I have this video that's going to demonstrate this term. It is a little bit graphic, so if that bothers you, you don't have to watch, just feel free to look away.
Like most victims, Julie knew her killer. It was her son. He wasn't wearing his seatbelt. After crushing her to death, he sat back down. Think.
Now, New York State law has recently changed as far as their seatbelt law goes. So my first question to all of you is, according to the law now, who does not have to wear their seatbelt in the car? Okay, so it looks like the class was split on this question. The correct answer is that everyone has to wear their seatbelt now, regardless of your age, regardless of where you're sitting. And with watching that video, it's for that reason. So we know that when everyone is buckled in the car, everyone is safest. If you're a driver and you've got friends in your back seat that aren't buckled, just remember, they're not going to stay put in a crash. They may end up colliding with you. So it's best to have everyone buckled, not just for the law, but for the safety of everyone. Now, there are 5 ways that seatbelts protect you in a crash. And first and foremost is they keep you in the car. So it prevents ejection. Trust me, you do not want to get ejected out of the car. And we're going to watch a video next about that. It spreads the crash forces over a wide area of the body. And what this does is it reduces the chance of injury on any one part. It contacts our body at its strongest parts, so our hips and our shoulders. This is another reason why you need to wear your seatbelt correctly. It gives you the best protection. So we see a lot of people, they'll tuck that shoulder belt underneath their arm. When you do that, all the crash forces end up on your rib cage, or we see people, bringing the shoulder belt behind their back. And in a crash, if you don't have that shoulder belt across your chest, you're going to sandwich forward as far as you possibly can. Seatbelts help us ride down the crash. They slow our body down and they protect our head, neck, and spine, which are our most vulnerable parts of our body. So if we're wearing our seatbelts, we're less likely going to be flying around the car and hitting our head on things inside the vehicle. So this is the video I was alluding to in regards to a rollover crash and ejection. So this was a real high-speed chase that was caught on camera. And you'll see after the vehicle rotates just once, the driver is ejected. He's not buckled and he flies out, at a pretty high speed and hits the pavement. And then ultimately a car ends up going over him. But if you are ejected out of the car, you're more likely to die. And this is a full-on ejection. Sometimes only part of the body makes its way out. It's called a partial ejection. So in which case the vehicle would roll over you anyways. So all the more reason to wear your seatbelt. All right, so we're gonna move on to the first two deadly Ds, which are drinking and drugs. The most common substances we see used with drivers are alcohol and marijuana. Now, any kind of substance is gonna have an effect on your body, but these two particular substances slow the body down, okay? They slow our brain down, they slow our coordination, our judgment, and our reaction time down. These are all things that we need to be a safe driver. Now, depending on the substance or the drug, they may make you feel more aggressive or reckless behind the wheel. Regardless of whatever kind of substance it is, whether it's legal, illegal, whether a doctor prescribed it to you or not, if it changes the way that you feel, it is going to change the way that you drive. So just because it's an over-the-counter medication doesn't mean it's safe to use and drive as well.
Jake! I'm sorry.
If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI.
So how do you actually know if someone is impaired? How do you know they're not safe to drive? And one way that we can tell is by measuring their BAC. So BAC stands for blood alcohol content, and it's the actual measurement of alcohol in your blood. So police officers can use a breathalyzer to determine this. And just to give you a reference, you may already know this, but the legal limit in New York State is a BAC of 0.08%. Another way might be to witness the physical signs of impairment. So things like slurred speech, having difficulty walking, balancing, bloodshot eyes. This is what we refer to as tolerance, okay? But it is important to understand the difference between these two terms. So just to give you an example, let's say Mr. Smith drinks a 6-pack of beer every single night. Now, over time, he's going to develop a high tolerance to the alcohol. He most likely is not going to show any signs of impairment. He's going to walk, talk, and function just fine. But his BAC is still going to be high because he has a lot of alcohol in his blood. Now, let's say his wife, who never drinks, one night has a glass of wine, just one glass. Now, she might be falling out of her chair and not able to stand up because her tolerance is so low. But her BAC is also low because one drink might register at like a 0.02. Now, who's safe to drive? Someone with a low BAC but showing signs of impairment, or somebody that functions just fine, but their BAC is high? And the answer is neither one of them is safe to drive because impairment looks different on everybody. And there's really no safe amount of alcohol or drugs to have in your system to be able to drive safely. Okay, so New York State works on a point system. You get points for certain traffic violations on your license. The more points you get, the more likely you are to have your license revoked. Now, what do you guys think? How many points on your license do you think a DWI is worth? Okay, so the correct answer is actually 0 because it is a criminal offense. And depending on the severity, it can result in either a misdemeanor or a felony. Now you all, because you're under the age of 21, fall under the zero tolerance law, which means you're not allowed to have any alcohol in your system. But it doesn't mean that officers can't charge you to the fullest extent that they can. So the higher your BAC is, the more severe the charge is going to be. And you're also most likely going to lose your license for a time. Now, there are financial consequences to a DWI. What do you guys think? What do you think the average cost is of getting a DWI? Okay, so the average cost is between $9,000 and $10,000. It's incredibly expensive. So imagine if you had $10,000 sitting in your pocket right now, what would you want to spend it on? Well, if you have a DWI, then you're most likely going to be giving your money over to the lawyers, to court fines, to surcharges. You're going to have to install a breathalyzer in your car. That comes with a lot of fees. Your insurance rates are going to go up, and a lot more other costs end up coming into play here. So it is financially hard.
Cheers. Cheers.
Woo! Woo!
In New York, impaired driving led to over 9,000 crashes and 61,000 tickets in 2017. Do your friends a favor and speak up. Make a plan to get home safe.
But really, the ultimate consequence with impaired driving is hurting yourself or hurting someone else. And we see it happen. Imagine going through life with a traumatic brain injury that's forever, or not having one of your limbs. Or imagine, taking the life of someone completely innocent that just happened to be on the road with you.
My name is Sandy. In 2014, my life changed forever. I didn't really know what happened until I woke up in the ICU. That's when I found out that my left leg had been amputated. I found out later I almost died. I found out my fiance Buck was seriously injured. The crash happened on a beautiful Sunday in June. Buck and I were riding our motorcycle. It was one of our favorite things to do. We had rode almost 200 miles that day, and we were almost home. Then, life as we knew it was shattered. Sometimes I wonder, why me? It's because someone made a conscious decision to get behind a wheel while under the influence of alcohol. So here's my message to you. Your decisions matter. Please, make good ones, because one bad decision can shatter a person's life. Have a plan to get home safe.
Impaired driving, it's a choice. It's completely preventable. As for yourself, we encourage you all to avoid using alcohol or drugs. But if you find yourself in a situation, don't drive, don't get behind the wheel. have a plan to get home safely. And there's plenty of ways that you can do that, especially now with all the ride sharing services that are available. For others, if you know someone isn't safe to drive, do everything in your power to keep them off the road. So take their keys, find them a ride, take them home yourself, let them stay at your house. In the worst situations, you may have to call 911, and nobody wants to call the police officers on a friend. But the trouble that they'll get in will be far less than if you let them get on the road and they crash, they hurt themselves, so they hurt someone else. So moving on to the next deadly D, which is distractions. There are 3 different types of driving distractions. So we have manual distractions that take your hands off the wheel, visual distractions that take your eyes off the road, and then cognitive distractions that take your mind and your focus off of your driving. And we're going to really focus on cell phone use because cell phones involve all 3 driving distractions, which makes them so dangerous to use when you're behind the wheel. So we're going to play a little game here. It's called the Great Multitasking Lie. And we're going to determine whether some of these statements are myth or reality. So my first statement is drivers can multitask. Do you think that's a myth or do you think that's a reality? Okay, so if you said myth, you would be correct. Our brains are not wired to do 2 things at the same time. So what's actually happening is our brain is switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth very quickly between 2 tasks. And every time it switches focus, there's a fraction of time that passes. Okay, it's called divided attention. That little bit of time, even though it could be a fraction of a second, in your driving world could mean the difference of whether or not you crash or you don't. You steer away or you don't. You hit the brakes or you don't. Okay, the next one. Talking on a cell phone is just like speaking to a passenger. Myth or reality? Okay, if you said myth, then you also would be correct. So yes, 100% your friends can definitely be distractions behind the wheel at times, but we found that adult passengers can actually be really helpful, acting as co-pilots. They can answer your phone or text messages, but most importantly, they're aware of what's going on inside and outside the car, whereas people at the other end of a phone conversation, they have no idea. Okay, next one. I only use my phone at stoplights, so it's okay. All right, great. Everyone got this correct. So that is a myth. Maneuvering intersections have always been very difficult for drivers. Anytime that you have to cross oncoming traffic, turn off one road onto another, there is a heightened risk for a collision anyway. Now, you have to do a lot of things when you try to maneuver an intersection safely, like determine speed, check your mirrors, scan the road, expect the unexpected, because you have to hope that the other drivers are all doing the same thing. Now, you throw in a distraction on top of that, now you've really increased your risk for a crash. And studies have shown that you're still distracted up to 27 seconds after you use your phone. And that's plenty of time for a crash to occur. All right, next one. Voice to text is safe while driving. Okay, this is another myth. Now, voice to text can actually be more distracting than holding your phone, because a lot of times, not only are you cognitively distracted by composing that message, but a lot of times because of like autocorrect errors, your eyes are going to end up on your phone anyway. So you end up with that visual distraction. Hands-free phone calls are safe while driving. So this is another myth. Okay, hands-free eliminates the manual distraction by allowing both hands to be on the wheel, but you're still cognitively distracted by that conversation. So when you give your brain too much information to process, it cannot handle it. Okay, so as a result, your brain is going to filter some information out, which means your brain won't process it and you technically won't see it. So drivers who are on their cell phones will miss up to about 50% of the information that's in your driving environment. And this is something called inattention blindness. So I have a video here that explains it a little bit better.
Sometimes our mind wanders. And when we snap back to reality, we have no idea what we missed or how long we were gone. Daydreaming isn't the only thing that causes this inattention blindness. When we talk on the phone while driving, there are periods when we go blind to our environment without realizing it. So billboards, cars, kids playing, even stop signs and red lights can pass us by unnoticed. Certain things may seem harmless, but some activities just aren't safe to combine. Our brain is not wired to pay attention to more than one complex task at a time. What we're actually doing when we think we're multitasking is quickly shifting our focus from one activity to another. So while our mind is engaged in applying makeup, arguing with backseat drivers, fumbling for a water bottle, or a conversation, it's blind to the road. In fact, drivers are 4 times more likely to crash while talking on the phone, and 23 times more likely while texting. Driving can feel uneventful, but it really takes our full attention to keep the car on the road. We're surrounded by distractions that can hijack our focus. Whether we let them is up to us.
Okay, moving on to our last deadly D, which is drowsiness. So drowsy driving tends to affect younger drivers more so than older drivers. You guys tend to be busier, you sleep less at night, and you're more tired throughout the day. Similar to impaired and distracted driving, drowsiness affects our brain. It slows everything down, our alertness, our attention, our reaction time, our judgment, as well as our decision making, all things we need to drive safely. Now, there are some warning signs. These might be obvious, but we see drivers usually ignore them, and that's usually when a crash happens. But signs that you're too tired to drive include yawning, highway hypnosis. So this is like when you're zoning out and you can't remember the last few miles that you've driven. You can't keep your eyes open. You start hitting those rumble strips. You miss your signs, your exits. You can't keep your head up, and you start tailgating. Now, if any of these things start to happen while you're on the road, we recommend that you pull over where it is safe to do so and take a quick nap, because really sleep is the only cure. Drinking coffee, rolling down your window, blasting your radio, it might help for a few minutes, but it's not a long-term fix. Really, it's sleep. So you all, as younger drivers, need a little bit more sleep than most. You should be getting about 7 to 9 hours every single night. It takes just a few seconds of your eyes being closed for a crash to happen. So sleep is really, really important. So moving away from those deadly Ds, we're going to talk a little bit now about how to share the roadway safely with everyone, because there's more than just cars out there. We have to share the road with motorcycles, pedestrians, as well as bicyclists. And if you notice, all of these roadway users have far less protection than a car, which makes them very vulnerable. So as new drivers, you need to know how to share the roadway safely with them. So this isn't a poll question, but I just want you all to think about how a motorcyclist might be more vulnerable to a crash than a car. For one, they're smaller, they're harder to see. So especially during prime riding season, spring and summertime, be extra watchful for motorcyclists that are out there. They also have, or I should say they do not have self-canceling turn signals. So unlike a car, after you make your turn signal usually goes off. But for a motorcycle, that doesn't necessarily happen. The driver has to turn their signal off manually. So just imagine, if you see a motorcyclist approaching and they have their turn signal on, you think they're turning a different direction, but really they're going straight, how that might increase their risk for a crash. The other thing is that they can downshift and slow down without ever activating their brake lights. So imagine being behind a motorcycle. Make sure that you're giving them enough space, because if they're not activating their brake lights, you can easily creep up on them very quickly without even realizing it.
How close does a biker have to be before you see them? Here, here, or here. At a junction, look, then look again. Think, take longer to look for bikes.
Now, as far as sharing the roadway with bicycles, we all have responsibilities out there, both the drivers and the bicyclists. As a driver, making sure that you are approaching bicyclists with caution, you're slowing down if you're going to pass them, and you're giving them enough space. So if you try to pass a bicyclist quickly, you could actually throw them off their bike. And then being mindful that they may move into your lane unexpectedly. So if you think about what ends up accumulating on the sides of the road where bikers are supposed to be, and in the bike lanes, it's usually trash, debris, snow, all the things that we don't want on the roadway end up on the shoulder. So bicyclists might be moving into your lane to avoid those hazards. As if you're the bicyclist, making sure you're wearing a helmet, you're riding as far to the right as possible, and you're following all the same rules of the road. So the rules just don't apply to cars, they apply to everyone. And if we're all following the rules, then we're all going to stay safe on the road. Same thing with pedestrians. As a driver, that you're watching for pedestrians that are near the roadway, especially when there are no sidewalks, you're stopping for them in the crosswalks. You're being mindful if you're turning and a pedestrian's trying to cross. For pedestrians that you are using the sidewalks, or you're walking on the left side of the road if there are no sidewalks, and you're following the same rules as the car. So the pedestrian rules are a little bit different than vehicles, and one of the rules that I see not usually followed correctly all the time is this one. So when there isn't a crosswalk sign or signal, who must be the one to yield? Is it the pedestrian or is it the vehicle? Okay, so actually only one person got this correct. It's actually the pedestrian. Okay, so just remember, if you're not in a designated crosswalk, you're just crossing in the middle of the road, you're in the vehicle's space. It's not to say they have the right to hit you if you're there. They're not, obviously they're not going to do that, but it's your responsibility to yield to get to them. And it can be incredibly dangerous. I mean, you're going in a space in the road that they're not expecting you to be in, right? So they might not even see you. So as a pedestrian, if you're crossing mid-block, make sure you're yielding to the vehicle. And real quick, I haven't been able to do this slide because I've run out of time, but I think I can mention it not today. But obeying the signals, if you're a pedestrian, the signal over here on the left, that's called a pedestrian hybrid beacon. And on the one on the right is called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. The names don't really matter, but the point is that these are places to cross mid-block. These are not at intersections. And it's the responsibility of the pedestrian to push those buttons to activate the signals in order to cross safely. And it's the responsibility of the driver to obey those signals. So when you see those things flashing, make sure that you're slowing down, because it means that a pedestrian wants to cross and they have every right to cross at those lights. All right, so moving on to speed and aggressive driving, as well as road rage. This is a slippery slope. So speeding, like I said, has been a problem since the pandemic, even more so since the pandemic. And unfortunately, younger drivers are involved about 25% of all fatal crashes that are caused by speeding. So the faster you go, the longer it takes to slow down, the harder it is to control your vehicle. It easily can lead to aggressive driving behaviors like running red lights, tailgating, and then into road rage, where road rage takes it to a whole new level. This is assault with your vehicle, right? This is getting out and fighting with the driver. Guys, it's not worth it. So as far as speeding goes, slow down. Even if you're running a little bit late, it's better to arrive at your destination than not arrive at all because you end up crashing. If you're involved with an aggressive driver on the road, don't try to win, try to get away from them because it's not worth your life. It can easily escalate to road rage. And stay calm, be courteous, and considerate of all roadway users. So lastly here, we're going to talk about the inexperience and the graduated licensing laws. If you are in the process of getting your license, practice. Okay, get as many hours as you possibly can and drive in different conditions, drive in bad weather, drive at nighttime, drive in heavy traffic with your supervising driver so you get that experience, and follow the laws because they're designed to keep you safe. And one of the laws that I think there's some confusion out there about have to do with the number of passengers you can have in the car. So how many passengers under the age of 21 can you have in the car with you without your supervising driver present on a junior license? Okay, so the correct answer is 1. Because we know that the more friends you pile in the car with you, the more likely you are to crash. The only exception to this rule is if they are an immediate family member.
A 16 to 17-year-old driver's risk of dying in a crash increases with the addition of every passenger under the age of 21.
I am too.
We should go to the food court. We should go to the food court.
Ooh, I'm starving. That's a great idea.
Teen drivers should go it alone to make it home.
Now, this is just a quick summary of some of the graduated licensing laws. You can find the complete list on the DMV website. The one that I want to point out, because I do think there's confusion around this one as well, is on a junior license, if you're driving between the hours of 9 to 5 without your supervising driver with you, you can only do that if you're coming from work or school, and school is considered a credit-bearing course. So not a football game, not a school dance, not a school play, okay? So lastly, in conclusion here, if you haven't noticed, there's a theme throughout this whole presentation, and that's choices and consequences. So everything that we talked about today is a choice, whether you drink or use drugs, drive distracted, drive when you're tired, speed, whether you're being considerate on the road and following the rules and wearing your seatbelt, because some of these choices can have some pretty negative consequences, like getting a ticket, even worse, crashing, even worse, injuring yourself or someone else, and death. Death is a real outcome when we go out on the road every single day. So make good choices. Crashes are completely preventable, okay? Making good choices protects yourself, your passengers, and everyone on the roadway. So that's all I have. I thank you all so much for being a great audience. I think we have like a minute here. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can shout it out or put it in the chat box, but I hope you all stay safe, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We say thank you, Ms. Muse. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will see you at period, right?
Yes, 1:45.
They say one, please have the pledge of allegiance.